Today on Stronger Bones Lifestyle, I have Claudia Muehlenweg to discuss the importance of vision. What can we do to improve our eyesight? Bone health and eyesight are strongly correlated. Eyesight has so much to do with fall prevention. And for fall prevention and for bone health, focusing on your vision becomes something that is very important. And you're going to learn a lot of great information about vision and what you can do to improve yours. Welcome, Claudia.
Thank you so much for having me, Debbie. This is going to be a great discussion. The connections to bones and eyes.
Yes, that's exactly. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what is that connection between eyesight and bone health.
So a lot of times we don't think about our eyes or our vision in any way, shape, or form related to our bones, right? And think about it more in a way of when you close your eyes, and anybody that has ever done yoga, you close your eyes, you're in a standing or tree pose or any kind of balancing pose, and now you immediately fall over, right? So like when we don't even have to close our eyes. If our vision isn't good, if our peripheral vision, which is the side vision up and down, right? If we have that tunnel vision, often focusing our screens, we bump into lampposts or it's easier to trip over things. So peripheral vision is number one that often is ignored. Especially when you wear glasses, you kind of, everything behind the glass is sharp and then, everything around it you kind of ignore. The other big piece is, and this is something that most eye exams don't test for, is so-called binocular vision or stereo vision. In other words, how the two eyes work together, how we can create depth perception. So people that never had depth perception, they experience the world as a flat, like everything is flat. There's no 3D, there's no depth. They can't really gauge distances. And they might not know it because that's kind of what they know, right? But it's easier to mistake, you might think it's a shadow on the ground when it's an actual step, right? Those kind of things where, especially if the steps don't have that, the edge of the step isn't marked and you might just it's kind of camouflaged or maybe the sunlight isn't good, So a lot of times, those issues lead to falls, and then you are the expert in what happens after that, right? It's like, so our vision is a big, big piece in feeling balanced, feeling grounded, and preventing, getting hit by a car or overlooking a bicyclist or whatever it is, or tripping over a step. And that's really a big connection.
Okay, that's interesting. So that whole piece about depth perception, is that something that someone is born with? Is that something that develops over time? Is that something you're diagnosed with? Like, how would you know if that's an issue you have?
So it's very interesting because I got glasses at the age of 3, and you can sometimes see it in photos, my right eye was turning in. It's called a convergent squint. And so I did have some depth perception issues. Like I would bump into things. So there is so-called, since you asked that question, there's so-called born with issues like lazy eye amblyopia, where one eye kind of underdevelops. There is squint or strabismus, what I had, where either one or both eyes don't look straight ahead, so they don't work together as a pair. So if you ever cover just one eye, everybody listening can do that, just cover one eye. Or if you have an eye patch, right, you can cover it with an eye patch and then try to just touch your fingers together or pour a glass of water. You will realize it's very challenging to gauge the distances to things, right? So if it's not diagnosed as a kid, I think most people don't. For most people, they don't really have an issue. Usually it's discovered in childhood. But what I found is as we get older, we kind of lose some of that depth perception. And another big contributor is to what's now kind of popular called monocular or monovision, which is basically the idea of making one eye good at looking up close and then the other eye looking in the distance. So this can either be natural, like maybe naturally one eye is really good at reading and the other eye is good at looking at the far distances, right? So then you tend to only use one eye. It's also very popular with contact lens prescriptions where, let's say you're farsighted, you can see the distance well, but you have trouble reading, where they might give you a contact lens for one eye for close-up or the other way around for nearsighted people. But basically, you're using a contact lens to make one eye the reading eye and the other eye is the distant eye, right? So that, again, means that you don't really use the eyes together. It's also sometimes popular in so-called lens replacement surgery, which is what they do when you have a cataract, right? When they replace the lenses, instead of making them both for distance, they would make one like near and one far, and that's called monovision. And I've always found that those people either have very, very poor depth perception or no depth perception.
Yeah, so this is really critical because what the big thing is when it comes to bone health is we want to prevent falling and fractures. Because when you fracture a bone, especially a hip, pelvis, you are out of the game of life. Like really, truly, the quality of life, that's it. And I've had weight bearing issues in my 50s. And even at 50, I was out of my life, like sidelined. So that's the big thing. And so fall prevention, so understanding that the eyes play such a role. Now, you were talking about some things you're born with. I want to know the other end of this. What is naturally that happens to eyesight? Are there things that naturally happen to eyesight? Is this just something we have to accept with aging? What are the things that happen? Or then, so tell me that question. What should we naturally expect in terms of degeneration in our eyesight as we age? Then I want to know, we'll get into, and what can we do about it?
So yeah, I mean, there is, as we as we get older, we get more wrinkles and things change. I mean, we can't pretend that our bodies and our brains and not changing. They do. Honestly, I think the science is still out exactly what happens to the lens. We often hear a lot of times when you're 40, 50, your lens grows or it gets harder or something, you can't focus up close. I know a lot of people who can focus perfectly fine up close, even in the 80s or 90s, but it's very common to experience that kind of trouble reading small print as you get into your 40s, 50s, 60s, right? So that is common. I wouldn't say it's normal, and there's 100% things we can do about it. So that's number one. The other thing that, again, most eye doctors would say, everybody gets this presbyopia thing where you can't read small print, and everybody gets cataracts. So I hear that a lot as well. So yes, again, cataracts are very common. And, I know you teach nutrition. There's a lot of connections to nutrition and heavy metal exposure and steroids and other factors, that can eventually, as you get older, right, especially if you have decades of a poor lifestyle of alcohol and all the things, smoking, all the things, we used to do back in the day and maybe still do, will eventually lead to some degeneration. I mean, that's just, to be expected. Then other eye diseases like macular degeneration, which is affecting the central sharp vision in your retina, those cone cells in the macula, and glaucoma, which is another disease where your intraocular pressure is elevated, could be related to high blood pressure or just being in a high pressure job or being the perfectionist. So there is definitely things that are common. But again, it's not necessarily normal. And it also really depends, from my belief, on your outlook on life. Because why are cataracts so common in the mid 60s? That's when people retire, there's a whole like empty nest. And there's this whole of like, well, what now? Like, what am I now that I don't have this career anymore? So I feel there's a lot of emotional, mental layers that traditional medicine would never even talk about.
Yeah, so you just even so you're hitting on root causes or the why behind degeneration of eyesight. It's the same thing with bones. You mentioned heavy metals, which is toxicity, one of the root causes of bone loss, inflammation, root cause of bone loss, and you mentioned nutrition or diet. So yes, lifestyle, this is what I keep going back to. There's no quick fixes for anything. There is raising awareness to the education behind it, and then fixing and bringing in as many positive lifestyle components. And that's what I love about what you do, Claudia. So explain what those things are. What is in our control? If we know that, okay, this thing is going to contribute, this is going to contribute, what then can we do?
So there's, like I said, there's many different layers. So something that people always ask me about that everybody probably heard about are eye exercises, right? I used to teach yoga. There's the yogic eye exercise, the clocks where you move your eyes in a circle, or, you do those, they sometimes call them pencil push-ups, or you move your intention in and out. And I always say there's nothing wrong with these things, because anytime you create mobility, you move in and out, your lens goes from flat, relaxed in the distance, it kind of gets bulgy. When you look up close, it's like, I always think like flexing your biceps versus relaxing it, right? So those things are all really useful. However, my approach is helping you, you see in a relaxed way all day long. So eye exercise, again, it's almost like when you teach the difference between movement and exercise. You can exercise, and exercise is a teeny fraction of movement all day long, right? When we walk upstairs, when we walk, all the different things, we bend down, we squat, when we get things out of the cupboard, whatever we do all day, we're moving, right? Exercise is a specific form. And so eye exercise can have their place, but I always found them incredibly boring. I found them kind of mechanically and mindless. And what we haven't talked about is we actually see in the brain. So the eyeballs obviously are the portals to the our light receivers. The retina is part of the brain, but we actually perceive what I call see is in the brain. And when I get bored, in fact, the founder of natural vision improvement over 100 years ago, an ophthalmologist, Dr. Bates, he found that pupils in school that were bored developed vision problems because they were bored. So I always believe in curiosity and interest. And if you find eye exercise really interesting and fun, then by all means, do them. But I teach a more of an approach of how to use and how to be aware of our eyes, how to notice when they're strained, what are things we don't want to see, and really working with brain-based approaches. We do a lot of things with eyes closed, using our memory, using our imagination, because that's how the brain, the visual cortex works. So yes, there's mechanical things that are helpful, but if you don't tie them in to the perception, the whole piece of you, and also how you see yourself. I mean, there's such a bigger world about vision, then that's why the word vision I prefer that over eyesight, which is just visual acuity, how sharp you can see, right? Which is important, but that's just one little piece of vision, really.
Yeah, you're going into what happens when the eyes are closed. You're going deeper because vision is one of the components of balance. There's 3 parts of balance. There's a musculoskeletal system, the physical body, there's vision, and then there's a vestibular, which is the ear fluid levels. So vision is so critical to balance. And when women get diagnosed with osteoporosis or osteopenia, they spend so much time on trying to improve balance. And now I want to shed light on vision, or I would say eyesight, but now you're getting me to say that vision piece. So yeah, and you're going deeper. This is not just put glasses on so you could see better so you don't fall. This is close your eyes and fix what's inside. And I love that.
Yeah, and the peripheral vision, again, there's a lot of times the peripheral vision back in the day, we wouldn't have survived as a species if we didn't notice, things coming. Not so much from the top. I always say as humans, we don't have many predators coming from above, but, from the sides or below, snakes or, whatever can come. So nowadays, especially with glasses, and I'm at my sister's place here in Germany and I'm seeing her reading glasses here. So I'm putting them on. I don't really like to put them on, but I do. So the thing is, for those of you watching, if you're just listening, I'm putting on some pair of glasses. And when you have glasses on, you have this sensation of, again, everything is sharp, but the outside is all like, basically ignore the part outside, the peripheral vision. Now, peripheral vision is not clear for anyone. This is our human eye anatomy, is a very sharp center spot, the size of a pinhead. It's tiny. And the further away you get from that center, wherever you point your eyes, right, wherever you look, the further away you get from that, you see things, and you see mostly movement in the periphery. You see movement. You don't even see color in the outer periphery. So when we don't stimulate that peripheral vision, it kind of dies down a little bit, or we don't pay attention, especially when we look at screens all day. And again, when we wear glasses, it's like kind of a tunnel vision. So one of the big approaches that I do is blocking the central vision. You can literally just use the Post-it or something and just really work with opening up the peripheral field, because it's important for everybody to have good, especially when you're driving, right? And when you're driving, if your peripheral vision is not good, you might not see that other car, in next to you, or you might not see that pedestrian trying to cross the crosswalk. So those are all skills that are really important to work on as well. And that obviously we do a lot of that with eyes open too. So it's not like eyes closed all the time. But yeah, eyesight is just the sharp vision, which is important. And it's a big piece of what I do. But there's color vision, there's night vision, peripheral vision, how the eyes work together. There's so many aspects of vision that are, and then also your inner vision and your life vision, right? What we talk more, the metaphorical, approach.
Yeah, and you're getting me to think about all the conversations I have about falls, because that's what I do. I have conversations, and I teach live classes. I'll hear stories about I fell, and now you're getting me to think about where was that a peripheral vision issue with that fall? What did the curb that they didn't notice, the
Uh-huh.
step that they didn't see? And so it's true. Like this is part of raising awareness for fall prevention on all of the different areas.
Yeah, and I know I just did an Instagram reel the other day as I was walking. When I go on hikes, I notice a lot of times people are just looking down at their feet the whole time. And so I did a whole walk once at a conference where we put those post-its in front of our face, and we could see the bottom, right? But the point is that you looked into the post-it so that you just use your peripheral awareness. And it's very interesting because the same cells in the eyes, there's two different cells, the cone cells, which are the sharp vision cells, the color vision cells, and the rod cells are those that give you night vision. As you might remember, we never see color at night. They give you see movement. They're very light sensitive. But when you train your peripheral vision, you're also improving your night vision. So at night, when we look at this, let's backtrack. During the day, when you look at let's say an eye chart, the letter that you look at, you see better than any other letter. That's the foveal vision, that sharp vision in the middle, right? And that's something that a lot of people with poor vision, they say, no, I see them all the same. I'm like, okay, you're staring. So we go back into learning how to approach our eyes based on our vision based on anatomy. But at night, that central sharp vision doesn't work because the cone cells don't function at night. So now we have to look, when we look at a star, you have to look at the star right next to it to see it better. So pilots or people that at night, they know that their central vision is not as sharp or not as good as their peripheral vision. So that's a lot of times that we work on those things where people tell us, I can't drive at night anymore. So those are all handicaps as you get older, right? When you're afraid of driving at night. And it's so easy to make improvements to that. I know we went off track a little bit, but it's really understanding how the eyes work, how the brain works, how your vision works, how both eyes are connected to both sides of the brain. There's so much to the beautiful anatomy of the eyes and the neuroanatomy of that is just so fascinating. And I think once people understand more about it, they also appreciate their eyes more and, take better care of them. I think that's a big piece of having good vision into old age is really, being by not eating sugar, because it's like, all the consequences, all the things that happen when you drink too much alcohol. And so, yeah, I think my heart goes out to like really making you appreciate your eyes and like, knowing how much it's in your control, how well you see as you get older. It's not just all the genetics and aging. So it's a lot of times people have more control than they think.
So, Claudia, what you just said about the cones and the night vision and all that was so intriguing to me because as you were speaking and you were saying we don't see color at night, I started to think about when they're showing us something, probably mostly on TV, where you see a night vision or maybe there's a deer in the road and you think about looking at it. Yeah, of course, everything is like black and white. And I never even, the colors still exist in everything that's there, but we don't see the colors. I didn't realize that's probably this innate aspect of safety because the body's always trying to keep ourselves safe. So that's probably this innate aspect. But what it brings up for me is how you are looking at eyesight or vision rather, that this is not just put glasses on or can you see better, but rather what are all of the components of your vision? What do you need to be aware of? What do you need to pay attention to? Because again, back to why this is so important for me is that we do not want to fall. We do not want to fracture. We want good balance. And it really is one of the big topics that comes up for ladies when they're diagnosed with osteoporosis or osteopenia. And it's also when I have new students that I work with, I've worked with thousands of people in bone health since 2014. What I know, what they say to me is my balance is terrible. My balance is terrible. And so if I can get them to make connections between, all right, you want to improve your balance? Well, what are the things you need to work on? And it's not just about standing on one foot. It's all of these areas. And this is where you come in, Claudia. You come into the eyesight piece because this plays a critical role. And you mentioned it, I'm in my late 50s. And I've been practicing yoga for a long time and I teach a lot of classes. So I have what I would consider probably as good as it gets balance for and I'm going to say this, for my age, only because if there is a degenerative quality to age, to eyesight as we age, or let me just say a lack of paying attention to it, which contributes to it going
Mhm.
down. I think that that's what you're making me realize. I think I'm as good as you get. And I could close my eyes when I was doing tree pose in my 30s. I cannot close my eyes in tree pose close to 60. And I practice yoga all the time and I practice single leg balance all the time. That's musculoskeletal. So when I bring in this closed eye piece, which is where you come in and your work comes in raising awareness to, okay, yes, go practice yoga and stand on one leg and also do these other things for vision. So can you please tell us about what it is you offer, about your program, your passion that you put into this 5-day program? I'd love to share that with my community.
I would love to. So before we get into the 5-day, one more thing I wanted to say that's super important that people really need to know is that, and I always get that feedback from everybody when I do my webinars or my 5-day trainings. So a lot of times as we get older, really quick, I'm going to make it really quick. So when we get glasses, the diopter, the strength of the glasses, the lens, is only for one distance. Everybody that has reading glasses ever realize when they look in the distance, it's blurry. That whatever that strength of the glasses is doesn't work for far away, right? So when you get older, now they give you those so-called progressive glasses or multifocal or varifocal lenses. In the past, they would give you bifocals. They had that line, and you would just have a bottom part for reading and a top part for distance, right? There's several problems with these glasses. They might be convenient because now you don't need two pairs, one for reading, one for driving, let's say. But they have varying degrees of strength. And first of all, you start tilting your head based on like, what is the thing that I'm needing right now? And that creates tension in the neck, is connected to astigmatism. But the more important part, when you look down, all these glasses assume you're reading. But now you're going on a hike or you're walking down a flight of stairs. Everything will be blurry because that distance is not depending on how tall you are, doesn't work because it's meant for reading. And people tell me immediately when they got these glasses, they're like, oh my God, I was so dizzy. I actually, people fall and trip when they get these glasses. And then the eye doctor always says, don't worry, you get used to them. And the brain is amazing at getting used to bad and good things. So the brain does get used to that, right? But that's another thing that I do in my trainings is I get everybody out of those glasses. They're also very expensive. And we always look at like, when do you really need glasses? If it's important for safety, for driving, for instance, or maybe not for driving, maybe you're okay. So we always break it down to like, wear glasses only when you need them to. And maybe you need two pairs, maybe you need one pair for computer or reading and driving. And that's fine, but they're very inexpensive when you break them into separate. That's one thing I do. In the 5-day training, we don't talk about glasses because that gets a little bit more complicated with prescriptions and measuring, right? That's a little bit more advanced. But in my 5-day training, the reason I'm offering this for free is because people always tell me, oh, I don't think it works for me, or I don't know if it works for me, or my eye doctor said, that's not going to work. You can't improve your eyesight. And I always say, don't believe your eye doctor. Don't believe me. See for yourself. And the 5 days are just long enough for everybody that's participating to see that what they're doing, the techniques I'm teaching them, are having an impact on how sharp they see and how their eyes feel. And then they're like, okay, that's interesting. I actually see that there's a difference now. My eyes feel more relaxed. They're more lubricated. I see a little sharper, whatever the things are that we get as responses. And so we know there is something we can do about it. And that's really, I want everybody to feel inspired and to understand there's something they can do. And we don't do any eye rolling or any of those exercises in the 5 days. So,
Well, that's great. So you are sharing what is possible.
yes.
And especially because you give them wins, because I know you're pretty successful in what you do and you have a lot of great testimonials. You have a lot of great feedback because you've been doing this for years. And so this is effective and works, which is why I wanted to have you on and why I wanted to share what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. And what I hear more than anything after the 5 days or in general is like people saying, I have hope now. I have hope, when all I felt was discouraged and sad and frustrated or worried. A lot of times I hear that they see their parents lose their eyesight or becoming blind. And, maybe that you even have a disease that runs in your family. And now there's a feeling of, there's something I can do about it to keep my vision as top-notch as possible.
You and I are so alike. That word hope, that to me is the most important thing I can give someone. Well, first to give them hope when they meet me and start working with me, and then for them to be in control of their bone health and make a shift. I love this because I think we both want to prevent future suffering, and we've seen it, we've been there, and then we have this work that we do that actually helps people be empowered and be in control and have what they thought they couldn't, and realize that no, it's not just a part of aging. There is something you could do. And that's what it is. We're sharing education. We're sharing the how to do it. And that's great. So I love what you do. I am so glad to share this. There is going to be a link below on your next challenge or your next event that you're doing, so that they could try it for themselves. You say don't listen to your doctor, don't listen to you. I'm going to say don't listen to us. Pay no attention to the two ladies talking on the podcast, but rather try it for yourself.
Yeah.
Then you'll know it works.
I think that's always my thing, because a lot of times, especially now with social media, there's a lot of people claiming I'm the guru, I know everything. And I'm always like, just take this as inspiration, see for yourself. And if it doesn't work for you, that's fine. I know it works for you, but obviously you have to also do it. And this is the thing that I know you do too. People always want for quick fixes like LASIK or whatever, or glasses. But in health, there is no quick fixes. And as long as you're ready, and it doesn't mean hours of eye exercises. And in your case, I know it doesn't mean hours and hours of whatever, balance trainings either. But if you have to be willing to invest into your health. And my grandma used to say, health is the most important thing. And as a kid, I always thought that's so boring. And now we know, right? Once you've been sick, we know, or once you lose some of your vision or whatever it is, or your strength, or you can't walk properly, you know how important. There's nothing else if you don't feel strong and healthy. Everything else will kind of, not be as joyful and good and possible, be even, So yeah, thank you.
Yes.
For having me.
Yeah, of course. No, yes. So look below and get in touch with Claudia, and there'll be links there. So there's plenty of ways for them to find you. And then, of course, Instagram, YouTube, and all the places that you are. So thank you so much for sharing what you share with women, and of course, men too. But my community is mostly women. So thank you so much for showing up this way at this point in your life.
Thank you so much for having me, Debbie.
Thanks for joining me on Stronger Bones Lifestyle. Are you ready to take charge of your future? For show notes, resources, and information on my programs, please visit DebbieRobinson.com. If today's episode empowered you, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs it. Together, we're building stronger bones and stronger lives. Take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.